Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 138. Yes, we're still climbing that ladder, that imaginary ladder. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. Or if you're watching this on Facebook, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. That's the other way you can keep updated about what we're doing here at the Hare Krishna Project. As you know, we don't just produce this podcast, we also do book distribution, events, Hare Krishna festivals, public talks, all the things that keep me out of mischief. I like to be kept busy. Okay, this week's podcast, I say this every time, but I am always delighted by the range of guests that we get on this podcast. And if you look at the last 3 years, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, an adventure, traveling around the world, meeting fantastic devotees. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest this week. It's Jayanti Dasi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Jayanti, it's fantastic to have you with us.
Well, thanks for asking me.
And I'm really excited about today's conversation. Just so the viewers know, just before we started recording, we were just reminiscing. And we first met in a beautiful city called Bath, or Bath, about 11, 12 years ago. I was helping to organize a Hare Krishna festival above a pub. And Jayanti came along, and yeah, we've known of each other since. And in a minute, it will become apparent as to why I've invited her on as the guest this week, because she has a fantastic story to tell. So Jayanti, we're going to start off with a nice, easy question. It's the question that every guest gets to warm the guest up and to warm me up as well a little bit. So tell us a little bit about you and where you are from.
Well, I'm originally from Aberystwyth in Wales, West Wales. So I'm a Welshie, which is siarad Cymraeg yn tipyn bach. What about me? For work, I'm an actress and a singer-songwriter and scriptwriter occasionally. And I'm a mother of 2 beautiful daughters, one who's also a devotee, and I have 3 grandchildren.
Wow.
And what else? I'm living in Berlin at the minute, and I lived in Bath for 30 years, and that's where we met. And that's
30 years. That's a long time, isn't it? In one sense, 30 years is a long time.
That's really because I had kids there, and so I suppose, you know, there's a 7.5 year age gap between them. So then we were there quite that long period. But that's where, you know, I met all the devotees, where I met Narayan Maharaj. So Bath holds a special place in my heart for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And we can come on to that in a minute, because I have some fantastic stuff. Well, I think fantastic stuff to say. Just if you don't mind, maybe talk a bit about your kind of upbringing. Did you have a particularly religious upbringing in Wales?
No, not religious at all. I think my parents used to send us to Sunday school just to get rid of us on a Sunday morning. They didn't go to church. They just packed us off to Sunday school. But I loved it. And then my kind of spiritual journey really began when I saw a movie called The Song of Bernadette, which is basically a black and white movie when I was a little girl about Saint Bernadette and her visions of the Mother Mary, Madonna, and the beginning of Lourdes, basically. And it's her entire story. And I can remember just sitting in my bed, you know, looking out of the window, praying to God that I would have a vision, because she was like the chosen one. I wanted to be the chosen one. And I wanted visions of Christ. You know, I was like, please let me have a vision, please. And that was the beginning of my slight obsession, I think, with Jesus. And I wanted to become a nun because she became a nun. So I got myself confirmed at the age of 11. on my own, off my own bat, and did volunteer work for the church, in the cafe, went around the old people's homes singing and stuff like that. And got teased a lot by my brother for it. And then I think it was the whole 70s seeing Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, he was a very handsome Jesus and a hippie. And I mean, I reached the age of 12, and that was, it was Bowie, Jesus, and Mark Bolan. That were my guys at the time, So that was the kind of start of, that's how that whole spiritual, and I used to talk to God a lot, and I don't know where I got it from, apart from, just born like that, maybe. I don't know.
And in terms of being creative, you've talked about being you're an actress. I mean, a singer, a songwriter. Did those interests start from a young age?
Yeah. So I never wanted to be anything else. So when I was 3, I did ballet, and wanted to do dance, was my, but then I discovered, I don't know, just I was always a lot on my own, and always in my imagination, and acting out characters, acting out little scenes, dancing around the house. I loved it if everyone went out and left me on my own, and I could dress up and dance. I used to go fishing with my dad and take all my dressing up clothes. And then he'd be fishing, and I'd be like running around the fields pretending to be Maria from The Sound of Music. And so it was just my kind of happy place, and the place that did feel closest to God, actually, especially on stage. Once I was on a stage, even from a really young age, because I was on the stage from like 3 onwards, it was like I became, in my mind, just one with myself or with something, like my ego perhaps was out the way or something like that. It felt like a freedom and something flowing through me, where I was very self-conscious and shy in day-to-day life.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah.
So I can kind of see a trend here, in terms of, not a trend, but you're forming as an individual. You're developing an interest in creative activities. You're into music. You're into spirituality. And at what point then did Krishna consciousness or Bhakti yoga become a part of your life? How were you introduced to that?
Well, I was introduced to that by George Harrison, not personally, but I'd love to say personally, but no.
Yeah.
Through My Sweet Lord. I think I was 12. That was 1970, wasn't it, when he released that? And that was my second record I bought, single. The first single was The Singing Nun, singing Dominique. It was all in French, And then it was My Sweet Lord, and I used to have it on repeat. And of course, it's got the Maha Mantra in it at the end. Guru Deva, or just Hare Krishna, hallelujah. So that just circulated my mind from that age. So I had heard that from just, on repeat, listening to George Harrison. And then in Aberystwyth, some devotees turned up. We had a place called the Friendly Stores, which was a whole food shop and a cafe upstairs, all wooden, very 1970s, very hippie, very comforting, whole food and vegetarian. The smells were lovely. And there was a magazine there called Back to Godhead. And I used to just look through it, and I wrote down the address that was at the back. And I wrote off to them and subscribed to it when I was about 14. I couldn't understand a blinking word. But I tell you, the thing that really attracted to me was the artwork. And that was Shamarani Dasi's artwork.
Yeah.
That artwork. And I used to cut it out and make little collages. And so it was the art that really, but I honestly couldn't understand the purport. I didn't even know what purport meant. you know, I was like really baffled. But they had the Maha Mantra on the back of every issue. And so I'd seen and known that Maha Mantra, you know, since very young. And then devotees came to Aberystwyth, Prabhupada devotees. And we used to hang out in the Students' Union sort of room, and they'd come in there and they would, I don't know, I think they were sleeping in a friend reminded me that they were sleeping in a mini outside her house in town. And I don't know how we hung out with them, but anyway, I sort of got to know them a bit. And then I left Aberystwyth when I was 19 and went to live in London for about 6 years, got in with the wrong crowd. And we used to go to Soho Temple for free food because we were really poor. And my friend was like, oh, come on, there's free food at this place. You know, you have to sit through this really boring lecture and these stupid songs. But you get this really, really nice food. It's all free. So I'd go along, and then secretly, you know, I was like, oh, I love these lectures. Lectures. It was a program, basically.
Yeah.
Kirtan, you know, I just loved it. But I had to pretend to be cool, you know, and they're like, oh, God, what a load of tosh. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, you know, but thinking, oh, I can't wait to go back. And then we'd eat our prasad. And then I'd see them in the street sometimes, you know, doing kirtan, and I'd just quietly follow around. I actually think that prasad saved my life, to be fair, because I really got into some very heavy duty lifestyles at that time when I was young, you know. So yeah, and then I didn't actually meet, you know, my little tribe, Narayan Maharaj devotees till much later in 2000. And that came about from music again. So, you know, music's just my thing. I've always had a soundtrack to my life and always bought records since I first had pocket money. And my daughter had the Kula Shaker album. And I was like, oh, I like this. And of course it was Govinda, Tattva, Namami Nandanan, you know, and so I was just singing those songs constantly, just round and round. And I have a tendency when I buy an album, I'm a bit obsessive and I put it on repeat. I mean, for months and months and months. It's the only thing I'll listen to, you know, much to the annoyance of my daughters, like, oh, for God's sake, Mum. But it just gets, I get obsessed. So obviously those songs were then obsessing me. And they did an MTV, they took MTV to Vrindavan, Kula Shaker did. And the South Bank show happened to show it one day. And I was like, oh, Kula Shaker, cool, you know, in India, this is interesting. And then there's one point, and then Crispin's sitting under a banyan tree with Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. And I just went, oh, who's that? And I felt like I was watching him for hours. When I looked back recently, he's on for like half a minute. Like it's a brief, tiny moment. But for me, it was like time slowed down. And it was like, I felt like, you know, my memory of it was, oh, there was this huge, long moment. And, you know, and then there was more of him. And there wasn't really. There were little tiny moments of him. But there was only this one moment of him speaking. And I remember what they were saying and everything, you know, about, does it matter if you believe, will it still touch you? And he was saying, if you go down to the water, to Jamuna, all your clothes, and you go in, all your clothes will be wetted. Doesn't matter whether you believe in water or not. And it really, and there was something about him. And I just thought, oh, if I had a guru, that is who I would want to be my guru. And then I got a bit obsessed about him. How do I find him? And I started chanting on, I just bought some japa beads, started chanting on my own. And I put a little notice up in Bath in Harvest, just saying, any Krishna devotees around, I'd love to meet up. I met some Amma devotees and went to a bit of satsang. And then someone rang me one day, a devotee, and said, oh, yeah, we're getting together. Would you like to come? And I was like, oh, gosh, yes. were meeting in Wellow. And then I said, actually, what I'm looking for this guru. I don't know his name, but I think he's maybe Kula Shaker's guru. And she went, oh yeah, that's my guru. He's coming. Do you want to come? And I was like, what? What? So I went to Yashodananda's house, and there was Narayan Maharaj. And I was told to take a garland. And I was like, I don't know how to make a garland. And I made a garland and, gave it to him. And that was the start.
Just out of interest, which year was this?
2000.
Wow.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah. And then I spent a year because, Gurudev, he said, I had met a lot of bogus gurus in my life. And I knew people who had gone off to India with, bogus gurus and come back as heroin addicts and, having sex with everybody. And you know what I mean? Like really bogus stuff, not ISKCON or anything. I mean, other, I'm not going to name, but, all the really weird, odd gurus out there. One who was like a child who had millions of dollars, one who was whatever his name, Oshi or someone, like a sex guru. And I was just really like suspicious. I was just like, oh, I don't believe these people. I'd never met Prabhupada ever, so I had nothing to go on with Prabhupada. And Gurudev said, it's a serious thing for both people, taking a guru and taking a disciple. And you need to spend time. Who is this? How does he behave? What are his disciples like? How are they behaving? What's the conduct of them? What's going on around him? Take your time, take a year at least, to follow, hang out, to do kirtan and see if it's right for you. And I felt, I need to take my time. So we had kirtan every Sunday at Yashodananda's house. And Gurudev came there quite a few times with David Dasi, Kishori Mohan, Vishaka, Sharmarani. Quite a few people would come. Probably about maybe 4 or 5 times, something like that.
Wow.
And then after a year, I got initiated there at Yashodananda's house. I decided, this was for me. I actually decided, it was funny because I'd also been, I'd met up with the Amma devotees a couple of times, and they're lovely people, but it wasn't quite my thing, it didn't feel right for me. But then there was a big conference, and Amma was coming to London, so I just went. And someone said, oh, come up on stage, get darshan from her. And I went up on stage. And then I'm sitting there and they said, oh, she's going to initiate people. And I'm sitting there thinking, hang on a minute. Before I was initiated by Gurudev, I was thinking, oh, hang on a minute. But I've got a guru. My heart isn't here, And so I was like, oh, excuse me. Sorry, I've just realized, it's just come to me now that I've actually got a guru. And I don't want initiation from Amma. Do you mind if I get down off the stage? And they were like, yeah, of course, sure, off you go. And that was when I really realized, okay, Gurudev was in my heart. I couldn't bear to go to someone else. And that's when I came back, and he happened to come back to Wellow, and, I asked for initiation.
It's amazing because, well, firstly, I know where Wellow is as well as Bath. So I find your story fascinating. So I live in the village right next to Wellow. This is how much of a small world it is. I live in the village right next to Wellow. And I actually met Narayan Maharaj disciples, devotees in Bath in 2004. It was also the year I'd first met ISKCON devotees. And I remember I'd returned to Bath from Bhaktivedanta Manor, and after 3 months, I saw these Hare Krishna people in Bath distributing books and incense, and they were very nice, and they invited me to a house program in Bath. This was 2004. And I remember going to the house program, and for me, I didn't know there were different mats and different groups. I just thought we're all just Hare Krishnas. And I remember meeting one sannyasi who is, I think his name is Ashram Maharaj.
Mm.
And I remember meeting him. That was 20 years ago. And I still remember that like it wasn't 20 years ago. And I just find it so ironic, but yet also sad that I didn't just pop down the road to Wellow when Narayan Maharaj was in town. You know, I've
Mm.
been walking these streets, or was walking these streets for years at the same time and living in the area. And I think Narayan Maharaj left the planet in 2010.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been
And
a part of the movement for many years at that point, and I'm just quite sad that I never got to meet him physically.
oh, that's a shame. Yes, because he did come quite a lot, and then he also then, um, because there were so many of us living in Conkwell, Wellow, Bath. There's quite a few of us in Bath. Actually, at one point, it was just so many of us.
Mm.
It was just the high life for me. You know, like having, if it wasn't kirtan in Wellow, there was kirtan in Conkwell or kirtan, you know, all over the place in each other's houses. And then, of course, Gurudev came a lot then to Bath because Budara was there. Um, Obviously, Krishna Kanta, you know, lots of people were there. Um,
I mean,
and
at one point, and maybe it's still the case now, that there certainly was only a more Narayan Maharaj disciples in Bath than there were ISKCON disciples,
oh, yeah,
devotees.
that was the place for all the Narayana Maharaj.
Um, and some of them, without naming them publicly, some of them are still around. I know them.
Oh yeah, yes, obviously, yeah, very lovely people still there. Yes, I mean a lot of us when Gurudev left the planet, everyone did disperse a bit. People, we all sort of left Bath. Obviously, a few people are still there, thank goodness, because it's nice to have them around there. But yes, people dispersed a bit and went to different places. And then I don't know, it sort of I mean, I feel very lucky, and I really feel that that phrase, you know, causeless mercy. I really didn't know what that was, what that meant. But for me, I do feel like I did nothing to deserve it, if you know what I mean. Like I can't,
Mm.
I do feel it's a blessing, but not that I'm somehow chosen in some way. But you know, I don't think I'm special and different. I just think I'm lucky and I feel very grateful and blessed to have had that. And but I don't think anything else would have sufficed for me. And I feel like that's how Krishna, you know, Krishna's tricky. Krishna got me through music, through rock and roll, you know, because music's my thing. Krishna captured my heart that way. And Gurudev Narayan Maharaj was the only one who was ever going to capture my heart. And I have every respect for Prabhupada. And, you know, of course, without him, we in the West wouldn't have Krishna consciousness. But that wasn't the mood or the genre that, you know, attracted me, that the Greek people. I needed to be able to be myself, not feel pressured to be on a higher platform than I am or probably ever going to be. You know, I'm sort of, when I got initiated, Gurudev gave me the bare minimum. Like he just took one look at me. It's sort of like, you know, well, you know, can you try? He said, can you try and give up bad things? Can you try and give up meat? And I was thinking, I don't eat meat, but you know, I eat eggs and I've eaten fish and stuff. So he knew, you know, can you try and give up smoking? You know, not can you try? And then he said, you know, 4 rounds in the morning, 4 in the evening. That's like your bare minimum. And, you know, I'm lucky if I even do that sometimes. You know, I feel very like I let him down constantly. But I do feel like he really knew this girl, and you know, this girl, her heart's in the right place, but she's really not got much discipline, and she's not going to be attracted and captured if I give her too much rules and regulations. You know, I've always been a rebel and a bit of a rock and roller, so. And everyone who was there, all the devotees who were there at the time were, you know, they had all different jobs, musicians, business people, you know, not sort of so I mean, all pucker in their own ways, you know, I'm not saying that, but have jobs and sort of normal life and creatives as well. And I think that's obviously the only way I was going to get drawn in.
Thank you for sharing that. I was about to ask, what was it about Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj that attracted you? But you kind of answered the question in terms of his mercy and his willingness to accept you. I mean, you didn't say that. That was what I was thinking. But
Yeah, it's a real acceptance, and also just this sort of real mood of just love and affection. And his mood was something I don't know, I think I've ever come across really before. You know, really capturing your heart in such a soft way. I mean, you know, he was obviously firm and stuff, but it had that real acceptance and gentleness. And I think you could just feel in his presence that he was completely and utterly the real deal and had something otherworldly divine about him, you know, but not like, oh, magic, you know, coming out of the Bhutan, coming out of his hands or anything like this, but just calmly internal mood of love and affection for Radha and Krishna, you know.
One of the things I personally like about the Krishna consciousness movement is that there are different moods, because we're all different. And I was talking to somebody recently about, hey, this group of devotees have left that mat and formed a different mat, and there's another division, and I personally love all of that because I'm interested in social groups and studying social groups. And his response was, well, it's just because there's a different mood. We have different moods, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, people will go off and do their own thing or follow a different line or a different lineage, and that's a good thing. And there will be some people, some devotees, that need rules and regulations. You know, they need a guru who's going to metaphorically slap them and say, hey, you need to sort your life out. But there'll be others who actually just need a hug.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I do feel that, you know, I do feel life slaps me when I'm out of line. And I do feel Krishna's hand is, you know, Krishna's in charge of everything. And I'm always being encouraged to try and be better, you know, to try and keep forging, you know, ahead. I mean, you know, I know what platform I'm on. I know the level I'm on. I've never really progressed much. You know, I get little spurts and I progress a little bit more. But I also don't want to be completely complacent and be like, oh yeah, well, that's who I am, so I'm not even going to try. You know, I'm constantly like, my heart is trying. It's just, but I also do like that. You know, I have association with people who are, you know, way pucker and preachers, and I'm very grateful for that because they really keep me on the road. And when, you know, and do tell me what to do and what not to do, and not in a judgmental way, but, you know, in a gentle guiding way. And I really appreciate, and I need that. I don't want to be going off willy-nilly on my own. And I'm one of those people, I'm, you know, incredibly fixed and immovable from Gurudev. I just am. And so I like to follow his instruction. So then I follow people who have his mood. And I only want to go to kirtan and stuff where that mood is. That's, otherwise I don't feel right. I might go to something, but I just don't feel much from it. Or I'm like, oh, well, you know, it's nice and everything, but it's not for me so much. So, which is a bit limiting, but yeah, it's just.
We all have our particular interests. I might go to particular kirtans and think, well, I didn't get much from that. And that sounds very selfish, you know, because it's not always about us. It should be about service. But I think, oh, well, I wasn't, you know, they didn't use a harmonium, or the singer wasn't very good or something. I mean, so I think we all feel that to some extent.
Yeah. Try not to be judgmental or anything.
Can we talk a bit about your professional career now? I want to come back to maybe Bhakti yoga a bit later on. But just I want to kind of explain to the viewers and listeners how this podcast came about, because I think it's actually quite comical. Um, about 2 weeks ago, so I've known Jayanti for about a decade, and about 2 weeks ago, and I kind of didn't know, I kind of knew what she did for a living, but kind of didn't. I thought it was something to do with acting or maybe an artist or something. And 2 weeks ago, I was watching an episode of Nighty Night on BBC Two. So Nighty Night was a comedy on BBC 20 years ago, which was and is quite crude. It's something that I used to find very funny, and I still find funny now, but obviously our tastes change. And I was watching this comedy. It's kind of a dark comedy with a fantastic actress called Julia Davis, and all of a sudden there's this scene, and Jayanti's in the scene, and I didn't know it was her to start with. And there was this lady with tulsi beads. I think you were in some kind of uh appointment, and it was about you had some mental health problems, and not you, I mean the character, and all of a sudden there's this lady with tulsi beads, and I'm there for about a few minutes. I know that lady, I know that lady. And I was like, it's Jayanti, it's Jayanti. I didn't know she was an actress on BBC TV. And then I messaged you like the day after, I saw you in Nighty Night. And that's literally how this podcast has come about.
I know, that's funny.
And I've then spent the last 2 weeks reading your biography, looking at your website, and just amazed actually by all the things that you've done in your professional career. I mean, you introduced yourself at the start of this podcast as an actress, as a singer-songwriter, as a musician, and as a scriptwriter, which I think's different from a singer-songwriter. It is. And so I want to talk a bit about that now, because from your biography, you've done quite a lot, which is fantastic. I mean, I don't know where you want to start with that. I mean, do you want to start from maybe some of the music from the bands that you've been in? Share some of that information.
Yeah, so I started actually trained as a dancer. Went to Laban Conservatory. They now call it Laban Conservatory for Music and Dance, but it was just Laban when I went. And I danced with a dance company in Wales for years in the 80s, and taught dance as well. And then I moved to Bath and joined a band called Child Roland, and then another band I formed called Karma Diva. And that's when I joined a theatre company, in a comedy improvisation company. And in that company was myself, Rob Brydon, Julia Davis, Ruth Jones, Toby Longworth, Chris Grimes. Quite a few of those obviously went on to do a lot of stuff. And me and Julia wrote a duo comedy show, which we toured. And then we started writing for TV and stuff. And Nighty Night happened. And I co-wrote that with her. We improvised a lot of it. And I was going to play the part of Cass Cole in that, the woman in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
But there was a confliction of tour dates and things. They changed the filming dates, and I was already going to be on tour with the band. I was in Karma Diva in Germany, I think. And the manager at the time wouldn't sort of change those things. So I ended up, not playing that part, which is a shame because that would have been great. And then we've carried on, co-writing different things, or I've helped write on different shows.
And I guess just for context, I mean, one of the names that you mentioned is Ruth Jones, and a lot of viewers. I mean, I'm trying to think the viewers for this podcast. I mean, a lot of them are Hare Krishna devotees. I mean, if we all admit it, a lot of us do watch TV. We do watch comedy. I certainly do, not as much as I used to, but I still do love to watch a great comedy. And Ruth Jones is most famous for being in Gavin and Stacey, for playing Nez or Vanessa. And that's a fascinating character that she kind of portrayed. And Gavin and Stacey, I mean, there's been a few specials, and there's a special on this Christmas coming up, but it's one of those hit BBC comedies. So the fact that, I mean, working with Ruth Jones must have been an experience, I guess.
Well, we were all starting out together, so that was before any of us, got
Yeah.
into more stuff. Yeah, she was very funny. I mean, we did live comedy improv on stage, live shows of just improvised to get like a suggestion from the audience, and you just, you'd go with it and create scenes and stuff. And Rob Brydon, very funny, hilarious. Yeah, so that was in Bath and Bristol. We did that.
Can you tell us a bit about your one of the bands, Karma Deva? Is it Diva? Karma
Yes,
Deva. That obviously sounds like a bit of a devotional name.
I know it's nothing like the music.
How did the name come about? I mean, from your biography, it was in the year 2000 the band was formed. That was around the same time that you met some of your god brothers and god sisters. So was there a link between the two?
Well, I mean, I don't know why I chose that name, to be honest. I think because it did not reflect the music whatsoever. We played post-punk, sort of gothic post-punk music. Maybe it was me trying to, yeah, I don't know, trying to bring something into it that was spiritual. I mean, some of the songs I wrote for that band, they did have hidden meanings a little bit, but you wouldn't be able to perhaps tell. But no, it wasn't a devotional band in any way. It was purely rock, and I mean, the name was probably quite misleading, to be fair.
I'm quite intrigued now. I think after we've recorded this podcast, I'm gonna go and listen to some of the tracks and see what the lyrics are about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't my best work. As in, I'm much prouder of, the lyrical content of what I write now, and the
Mhm.
music itself. Yeah, that was more, I don't know, throwaway maybe, We were just always gigging. So there wasn't time to really write. I think we only put out one album. I put out a lot more work since. But I think in the 10 years, 8 years, 10 years we were together, yeah, we didn't write a lot because we were just gigging.
And have you done some musical work with Kula Shaker as well?
Well, I work, yeah, well, sort of, as in I work, Alonzo, the bass player from
Mm.
Cool. He has, I'm very fortunate that he's produced all my albums. So he plays on all of them and produces them. I go to his studio in Belgium, and whatever instruments are in the studio that aren't on tour, like Kula Shaker instruments, and he's got loads obviously there permanently. They go on the album, and he plays practically everything from drums, piano, guitars. I play some acoustic guitars, but I do all the vocals. Occasionally, his wife Audrey Evans from the Medieval Babes does some backing vocals for me. Yeah, so I work with him, and then I've done some of the little comedy segues on their albums, like Greetings. I play the choir mistress in the little segues between tracks, and there's a little segue on the latest album where I play what do you call it, a hair hostess, just a tiny minute thing before it goes into the next song. And then me and Crispin wrote for Kula Shaker, for the album, the First Congregational Church of Love and Free Hugs, we did a radio play, a 3-part radio play called Greetings, where we play all the characters. And we wrote that together, and that was a lot of fun. It's a comedy. It's very old school. It's like going back to 1958 or something.
Wow. Long time ago. So in terms of your, before we talk a bit about, I guess, acting and writing, in terms of your musical work now, with this podcast, I'm going to put a link to your website so people can look up what you're doing and listen to some of your tracks. But tell us a bit about your music now, and what inspires you to write it, what are the lyrics about, and that type of thing.
Well, the music now is, the genre would be, I suppose, a sort of Americana, folky, a little bit electric folk, the last album, sort of like a sort of folk rock a bit. Every song is different. I mean, they're inspired by what's going on in life, different aspects of love. Often there's like layers of meaning in, especially in love songs, a lot of songs about love in separation, that kind of thing. Loss. There's the latest album's got a lot of themes of loss, because I've just been experiencing that recently. I guess, I don't know, every song's really different, but they're all in that genre, that folky, slightly, there's a few country songs. And then the last album, like Magdalene's, definitely kind of 60s folk rock type vibe, I would say. Yeah, I mean, I'd be hard. I have to choose a song maybe to describe what the lyrics about, but they're often quite sad songs, but with a sort of hope-filled chaser. There's always hope in there, and there's always something about how to overcome things, And then I think if you're a devotee, you might get the hidden meanings in some of them.
Well, I'm now intrigued to listen to some of your current or most current music tracks to see if I can, because often you can feel a sense of Krishna consciousness or Bhakti yoga in a number of different songs, or you can feel what the singer or the writer is trying to say to you.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully in that music, I wouldn't say in comedy music, but hopefully in that music, if one is a devotee, one might, hear it on another slightly different aspect.
Yeah. Okay. And you're so talented. It's like we're going through the different things that you've done. I always love to interview people who have a fascinating story to tell. And we've also talked a bit about on this podcast your acting work. You were in Nighty Night, and you've also worked alongside David Schwimmer.
Schwimmer, yes, yeah.
Most viewers should know he was one of the main stars in Friends. And you've worked with him in, was it in it was you were a comedy character?
Yeah, comedy character in a series called Intelligence it's on Sky in England and HBO, I think, and Peacock, like streaming in America, and it went all over the world, and that's a very silly comedy. It's based in GCHQ in Cheltenham, so fighting cybercrime. And the comedy is, these high stakes things that are going on to do with fighting cybercrime and terrorism, things like this. And then the mundane, normal, actual characters who are running the show. And my character's Mary, and she's a cryptanalyst, but she lives at home with her mom, and she's a cat lady, and she's spinster and really messy hair. I've always got a wig on and stuff, and sort of, she's sort of very, very British and very self-deprecating, and then Schwimmer's character is he's an NSI agent who comes over, called Jerry, and sort of shakes things up a bit. I mean, I find it funny. It's very silly. It's very clean. It's very family. It's a family can watch it. There's nothing too awful in it. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I really enjoy working on that. There's possibly going to be another special. We did 2 seasons. A 3rd season was commissioned but it hasn't happened yet. Then we did a special, then there was going to be another special, but I'm not sure, things got halted a bit, so we'll see.
Okay, okay, and just to give you the credit that's due, so some of the other TV series you've starred in are Hunderby, Morning Is Broken, Human Remains, A Fantastic Fear of Everything, and Slaughterhouse Rules.
Yeah, that was I did a couple of movies with Crispin Mills and Simon Pegg. So they wrote Fantastic Fear of Everything and Slaughterhouse Rules. And again, I mean, in Slaughterhouse Rules, I hope you wouldn't recognize me. I've got like fake teeth that are based on his grandfather's teeth in, is it Ryan's Daughter, where he plays the character with those strange teeth, and he wanted to have a little homage. And then my character, I think, is based on somebody's school mistress when they were a child, and I've got a sort of big suit on to bulk me up and horrible grey wig and these fake teeth, and I play this rather revolting matron, which I actually enjoy, you know, being a really different character. So that's a lot of fun working with people you really like as well, you know, and trust. And other devotees, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you should just say that. I was just thinking about how, and I mentioned this before we started recording. There seems to be maybe a trend or a pattern or a link that a lot of the famous devotees, in the secular world, famous Hare Krishna people, just happen to be disciples of Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, particularly in the kind of creative industries like singing and acting and writing. So if I didn't know that Narayan Maharaj was your guru, I would have guessed quite soon on, because people like Crispin Mills, I think Chrissy Hines, and there are others, just happen. I mean, just happen. Nothing just happens. Everything's Krishna's arrangement, but they just happen to be disciples of Narayan Maharaj. And I've always been in, and a few others as well. But I've just always been intrigued by that. Who's someone who studies religious groups? What came first? Was there ever an instruction from Narayan Maharaj to be creative? Or
No,
did it just so happen that all the creative people levitated to Narayan Maharaj?
I think the latter, yeah. I think the creative people just levitated, or maybe we were being called. I don't know how it works. You know, they say your guru finds you. So I mean, you know, I don't know, but yeah, but you know, it's obviously one of the things that attracted me to the movement was that there was a space for me, because there were other creative people I could relate to, I suppose, who were in as his disciples. So maybe it happens like that. I don't know. Or maybe, yeah, maybe he's using our voices to different levels of success, you know, whatever. I don't know. But I mean, if
Okay, yeah.
Shaker and, you know, the songs they put out, I wouldn't have perhaps found Narayan Maharaj, you know. So it's a big sort of, maybe it's a big circle, or we're all connected by threads or something, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's something very powerful, I think, about what Kula Shaker do personally. You know, you go to one of their concerts and, you know, the room is full of love. And there are loads of people there who are not devotees, who don't really perhaps even know in that aspect, you know, that it is. But, you know, they're all singing Govinda, the top of their voices. It doesn't matter what language they speak, you know, they're all, and I laugh, I smile a bit, and I'm there too, you know, Govinda Jaya Jaya, and they're all singing along, you know, and they probably don't know what they're singing, but it's lifting them, it's lifting the room, the spirits, you know, and that you feel that Krishna is in the house, you know, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Guru Dev is in the house when that's happening. It's always a nice crowd. It's always a really loving crowd of people from all walks of life. I particularly, you know, I'm a very well wisher of Kula Shaker, because of course, you know, they led me to Guru Dev, and obviously personally and good friends of mine, but I also love the music they do.
Mm.
When I'm down, I often put a bit of Kula Shaker on.
Oh, they're fantastic musicians, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's great.
Amazing. And kind of linking Krishna consciousness with your professional life, how has Bhakti Yoga helped you with your professional career?
You know, that's a very interesting question, and I don't quite know the answer to that, because I can only think that the way it's helped me in my professional career is it's helped me to accept whatever comes or doesn't come. So, you know, it's a harsh life being an actor, because, you know, you're resting a lot of the time, you know, basically you're just not blowing working. And, you know, you can do loads of auditions and just not get the part. And I always, you know, I mean, through the years, you get tough. You have to be tough to that. You have to not take it personally. You have to just think, well, it's just not my part. But I think being a devotee and having, you know, really Krishna consciousness, I really do believe it's all in Krishna's hands. I'm not meant to. It's not for me. It's not mine. It's his. You know, it's his part, and he's giving it to who he wants. And the same with levels of success. You know, like, I think when I was younger, you know, I can remember as a child, you know, practicing my Oscar speech at the age of 6, you know, my acceptance speech. And I was really convinced, you know, I was going to get an Oscar or whatever. And, you know, that hasn't panned out for me. I'm very grateful for every bit of work I've done. But at one point, I was very ambitious and really wanted to do a lot more, you know. And then I think what's happened with Bhakti Yoga is it's really calmed that down in me. So I'm still ambitious in the way of, I want to work. I love my work. I want to produce. I want to be creative. But the results are not mine. The results are Krishna's. The fruit of my labor is for his benefit, Radha's benefit, Gurude's benefit. And I have to trust that whatever success comes my way is what I'm due, what I'm, you know, karmically, what I can handle, what's right for me, what's right for my bhakti, you know. And so that's given me so much peace. So it means I really can immerse myself in the creative process, really enjoy writing, really enjoy recording, enjoy performing. And then, you know, when I make the CDs, I've got freaking thousands of CDs under my bed and in the cellar I've just not sold. And I'm like, okay, well, that's it. That, you know, that's not what Krishna wants. That's not what's happening, you know. And not not being disappointed or upset, or, you know, wishing I was famous. I suppose that's the thing, is kind of letting go of that aspect of it and thinking, well, it's probably a right blessing, really. You know, keeping me just focused on the work.
And I think what you've just said kind of can be applied to all aspects of our lives, can't it? In terms of not being attached to the results of our work. We can love what we do, whatever our profession is or job or how we earn money or whatever, but not being attached to the results is a great teaching that we can gather or get from the Bhagavad Gita, from Lord Krishna himself. And it's so beneficial and useful to understand that and put that into practice, is to love work's good, but don't get so attached to the results.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think for me, it's really given me more enjoyment for the work. And then a lot of gratitude when I do get a job, you know. So for me personally, I'm better when I'm living in an attitude of gratitude. You know, it's better for my soul and for my heart, and for my brain, everything. So, you know, it could be that, oh, I wanted that and I didn't get it. Sorry, that's my doorbell. I'll ignore it. But yeah, just being grateful. So even if it's a tiny part in something, I'll be like, oh yeah, thank you, that's lovely, thanks very much, you know. rather than, oh, I wanted a bigger part, or, because one has an ego, but it just keeps that ego in check, which is nice as well. Yeah.
Okay. If you need to go and get the door, you can. It's
I really don't. It's okay.
all right. Okay. That's what I love about recording these podcasts, is that anything can happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And just generally your thought, you've been around the Krishna consciousness movement for quite a while. I mean, you first met devotees in the 70s.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what, 50 years ago?
Oh gosh.
I don't want to say, I was kind of, should I say 50 years? But it is, the 70s were 50 years ago.
Yes, I am what I am.
So you've been around the Krishna consciousness movement for quite a while, for quite a long time, and that should be applauded and celebrated. And you'll have a lot of thoughts and ideas and experiences that you can share with others. And I always love to ask each guest this is, how do you think we can encourage more people, particularly Western people, to take an interest in Krishna consciousness?
Do you know what? I just think you have to be yourselves, because what attracted me isn't necessarily what will attract someone else. So, I was attracted to Narayan Maharaj because of the devotees around him, and I related to people. I felt comfortable. I was able to be myself. And so, like you were saying, all the different groups and people, I'm sure that's, like you say, a good thing, because somebody might be very, very intellectual and really need that kind of intellectual discussion and that side of the thing. Whereas I'd probably be like, I'd probably be like tumbleweeds going in my head if it gets too intellectual. Like, oh, I just want to sing, and the food, I think that's very attractive. One thing I will say, and this might be controversial, I do not think you should ever pay for kirtan. Gurudev said this. This is not my opinion. He said, you should never pay for kirtan. It's fine for people to donate some money for the hire of the hall, or, to help pay for some of the food, but you should never pay for kirtan. It's not a concert. We're there to, kirtan is, I'm paraphrasing. These are not Gurudev's actual words, what I'm saying, but he did say we should never pay or charge for kirtan. And so I particularly refuse to go to kirtan where I'm asked to buy a ticket. And I actually feel quite annoyed by it. I really want to go to kirtan to worship. And so I think charging for kirtan is not a good way to attract people, in my opinion, to actual bhakti. But I know that people have different opinions about that. But yeah, I think kirtan should be free. You don't charge people to go to church. You pass a plate round, but you don't buy a ticket. And so, yeah, and I don't think the musicians should be paid for doing kirtan either.
Well, I agree 100%. You're preaching to the converted. I mean, all the kirtan events I've organized here in the UK under the banner of the Hare Krishna project, we never charge for kirtan. And actually, it's not Vedically correct. In the Vedas, it says a lot of stuff, but particularly says there's a number of things you should never charge for. And one of them is kirtan. And I was once told the other thing is medicine. You should never charge for medicine, but I'm not sure about that. But you should never charge for kirtan. And so I also sometimes weep when I see on Facebook someone's organizing a kirtan and it's £10. It's the principle of it. I personally can afford £10, but it's the principle of it. Is that you?
Because also new people might be coming, then they have to buy a ticket, and is it a concert? What is this? And sometimes it's out, here maybe it'll be out in a park, and I'm like, well, what are we paying for? Like, so, excuse me, I can't just come to the park and sit and join in kirtan. So yeah, I don't like that myself. I think it should be free. But as for attracting people, I think there are so many different types of people. The other thing I will say, one thing I remember Gurudev saying, we were in Wellow and he was there, and a friend, a devotee friend, had brought her friend who was a Christian, and he said to her, you know, she said she was a Christian, and he said, no matter, you don't have to change your faith. You can remain a Christian and still be Krishna conscious. It's not a conflict. He went, what did he say? Christ, Christos, Krishna, like this, you know, like it's all like.
The name is the same. It's in Prabhupada said this in one of his books in a conversation he had with somebody, that Christ in Greek is Christos and Krishna in Greek is also Christos. The name is the same.
Yeah, and he was just saying, and I think that's important too. It's sort of like, you know, that you don't have to literally, you can still believe in Jesus and Christ and have Krishna consciousness, you know. So yeah, but it's hard. I don't really know how to attract people. I mean, I'm quite quiet about my devotion, to be honest. You know, like you say, my character was wearing tulsi beads. Yeah, I'd forgot to take them off, and costume didn't notice. You know, they should have said, your character wouldn't be wearing this, take it off, and I just forgot. And they kept it in the film in Nighty Night, you know. But yeah, I'm quite quiet about my faith. I don't advertise it. I know a lot of people in, you know, music and in acting. There's a few people I know who are maybe Buddhist or exploring Buddhism, or a couple of maybe the odd Christian here or there, but a lot of people are actually really atheist and tend to really look down on you if you have, you know, believe in God. And I don't hide that I believe in God. If someone asks, I proudly will say, yeah, you know, and what I am. But I don't broadcast it.
Yeah, I feel like you and I kind of agree on so many issues. I loved it when you said, you know, I asked what ideas could you give in terms of attracting more people to Krishna consciousness, and your response was, would just be yourself. And I love that. Yeah, that's what I try and do. And you know, Krishna consciousness is how we live our entire life, isn't it? And how we perceive things and how we live. And for some reason, the word that's been on my mind for the last week is witness or witnessing. You know, and I probably walked past some Jehovah's Witnesses or something, and I was thinking about them and think, what are they actually doing? They're witnessing. And we don't use that word in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but it's actually an interesting word. We're witnessing through our acts, not through our words necessarily, but through our acts. We're being kind and caring, and we're serving others.
Yes, and you know, just having that mood of, you know, trying not to criticize. You know, Gurudev was really always talked about no gossip, don't criticize, don't gossip. You know. And of course, we all love a bit of a gossip every now and then. But, you know, I try to curtail that and not get drawn in too much and drama and gossip. And, you know, and if there's the other thing he said, I just try to remember things he said, really, to sort of, you know, these are glorify him, not myself. And he was saying, yeah, you know, if you don't like someone, or if you've got nothing good to say about them, you know, it should be pranams forever, and then just they're not in your life. You just don't have them in your life. And that's really stuck with me, rather than, you know, someone being in your life and then you annoyed with them or angry or criticizing, like there's bad behavior and all this. It's just like, well, just know, you know, Hare Krishna, bye. It's better than that. Yeah, and speaking with kind words and trying to have kind thoughts, and, you know, we're all human. So, you know, but just being yourself, because each one of us is part and parcel of Krishna. So he must have made us the way we are for a reason. You know?
Yes, most definitely. Okay. Jayanti, we've been recording a fantastic podcast this week. I think we've been recording for about an hour and 15 minutes or so.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
I know every time I kind of come towards the end of a recording, everyone says, wow, I can't believe it's gone so quick. Yeah. And
it's been on too much.
No, not at all. It's been really good for me to find out more about you and what you do. And Sorry, I just have to apologize. I know he probably doesn't watch this podcast, but Rod Brydon, you kept saying the name Rod Brydon, and I looked him up on my phone. I do know who he is. Of course, I know who he is. So if he watches this podcast, I apologize. He was also a big star in Kevin and Stacey, and he still
Yes.
does a few things on the TV, but not that I watch much TV these days. Um, it's been fantastic to record this podcast with you, Jayanti, and find out more about your story and your journey.
Oh, well,
Um,
it's nice to share it. Yes, one doesn't often get the opportunity, so it's very nice.
and I know one of your daughters relatively well.
Yeah,
And I think she's a bit younger than me, but we were at the same university for a while.
yes.
Um,
Aaron Mahini, yes.
yeah, I don't want to say my age. Well, everyone knows my age because I go on about it. I've just turned 40, but I think she's a bit younger than me by a number of years.
32.
Yeah, we've been around Bath. I know she's not in Bath anymore, but we've been around the same circles for years. So I do know one of your daughters relatively well. Okay, Jayanti, I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers at home, and then you
Okay.
and I can have a brief debrief after. There's
Yeah.
always a sigh of relief when the recording ends. But it's been fantastic to have Jayanti as our guest on this week's podcast, episode 138. Still can't believe it. We've made it to 138 episodes. Many of you know that after episode 10, I got a bit bored. And then, no offense to the first 10 guests, but then we started to ramp it up a bit. And I started to change be more of a varied list of guests, which we've certainly done over the last 120 or so episodes. So do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button. And or if you're watching this podcast on Facebook, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. It's via YouTube and Facebook. You can watch this podcast and be kept updated about what we're doing. And also don't forget, I love to receive constructive feedback. I love feedback. I get messages after most podcasts, and you are allowed to disagree with me, and you are allowed to disagree with a guest. But remember,
Oh,
do it.
I don't know about that, Radha.
But remember, do it in a constructive way. And I love to, and if you want to be a guest on a future edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast, get in touch. Okay, that's it for now. Until next week, I will see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Radhe 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 Sham.